The pastor who presented Jim for candidacy, Father Brian Dooley, is in fact his home pastor from St. Peter's in Ashton, where they have a very fine fish fry. See, I got that in. And it's a particular joy for me today, not only to be with Jim and those preparing for the diaconate in La Crosse, including our own, but it's a great joy for me to be with Monsignor Holmes and Father Brian and Father Greg Ein, because I did nothing to deserve to be surrounded by some of the finest priests in the diocese this morning. And yet that's just another one of God's generous and gratuitous gifts, for which I'm very grateful this morning. Now, dear friends and dear deacons-to-be and dear deacons who are here, one of the things that you will be called upon many times, or at least have the opportunity to do, is to help people better understand what it means to form and follow their conscience. As a matter of fact, there's very little that's more important than when the need arises that you be able to explain that clearly and gently and with love, but with complete truth. Why is this so important? Because, in my opinion, the biggest mistaken interpretation of the Second Vatican Council that we've lived with for 50 years is the misinterpretation of the teaching on conscience. Certain forces in the Church took the occasion of the new teaching on conscience in the Declaration on Religious Liberty. They took the occasion of that document to mislead people. Now, why they did that and what that's all about is between them and the Lord. As the quote which has become so famous says, "Who am I to judge?" But the Church was led astray on a very important matter. The current of philosophical thought and human thought that is at the root of all the troubles in the world and in the Church is that knowing begins with the knower. Knowing, in fact, begins with reality, which is there and to be known by the knower. The knower doesn't make up what he or she claims to know. The knower needs to know reality. The knower needs to know the truth, which, as it says in the first reading, is presented to the knower. God presents what is good and bad to the knower, just as it says there. And the knower, with his or her conscience, is to choose the good. The knower is to choose not what he or she would like. The knower is to choose the good. And conscience is that truth-seeking radar that scans the horizon of reality, looking for truth so it can lock onto it be changed by it, be made into a hero who proclaims it. That's what the conscience is. Right in the beginning in the garden, God made it clear to Adam and Eve that they were not to eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That is, he made it clear to them that they were not the source of the truth about what is good and bad. And they said, oh, we're big deals. The serpent convinced them what big deals. We know what is good and evil, just like God. So we'll make it up. And instead of a world where there is no pain, no suffering, no mourning, no death, Adam and Eve, so determined to be the source of the wisdom about good and evil, lost all of that for us. One of the toughest things about the afterlife for me is I still wonder how I'm going to hold myself back from punching the both of them out for what they did. We gotta love them. We gotta love them. So, the law of the Lord is the truth onto which our conscience locks like radar. And so we just sang, blessed are they who follow the law of the Lord. Most people today don't sing that. They sing, pre-Vatican II are they who follow the law of the Lord. Blessed are they who follow the law of the Lord. The conscience is made for the truth of the law of the Lord. And as it says at the end of the first reading, God doesn't give permission to sin. And so many people today treat conscience as a dispensation machine, which allows them to disobey the law of the Lord, because after all, it's my conscience. And I'm a big deal, just like Adam and Eve thought they were. It's going on millions of times every day. I followed my conscience. I am the source of the truth about what is good and bad. Me, and more me. This is the way most people live, and this is why you men, permanent deacons-to-be, have to be able to talk to them about this. Because until we get this straightened out, nothing else can get straightened out. As long as people can do whatever they want in the name of the conscience, nothing else can get straightened out. People followed their consciences into all of the liturgical abuses of the last 50 years. People are following their consciences into abortions, into gay marriage. It's all in the name of conscience, all in the name that I am the source of the moral law for me. That is, I have dethroned Almighty God from where he sits as the giver of the law of the Lord. I have thrown him off his throne, and I've put myself there instead, in the name of my conscience. This has to be made clear to people. Now, what does conscience actually do? We learn that from the gospel reading. You have heard it said, you shall not kill. But I tell you, you shouldn't even give in to anger. You have heard that you shall not commit adultery. I tell you, you really shouldn't have bad thoughts. That's conscience. Conscience always calls an individual to what is greater, to what is heroic. That's what it's for. When somebody says to me, I followed my conscience, I expect to hear a story of heroism. I expect to hear a story of beyond the call of duty. And so often what I hear is that my conscience dispensed me from doing the minimum. Conscience elevates. It does not diminish. To follow your conscience is a great thing. But it always means you went beyond the law. You felt called by God toward the heroic, and God gave you the grace to respond. That's what true following of conscience is. It's not a big get-out-of-jail-free card from obeying the moral law. Conscience locks on to the moral law, loves the moral law. Blessed are the ones who follow the law of the Lord. And conscience never says you can do less than that. As the first reading says, God doesn't make allowances for sin. But conscience lifts one up to the heights of goodness and truth and virtue and beauty. Conscience is one of the greatest gifts that the Creator gave to each one of us. It's a gift, it's a creature. It doesn't create moral truth. Conscience locks on to moral truth and goes beyond it so as to bring the law to perfection and to fulfillment. Please, dear deacons, deacons-to-be, Jim, and all of us, let's get the word out about the nobility, the goodness, the beauty of which we are capable, to which we are called by the exercise of rightly formed conscience. Praise be Jesus Christ.